Have you ever laid in bed at 2 a.m. and a single worried thought about your finances, your kids, or your future suddenly turned into a full-blown mental avalanche? Within 10 minutes, you aren't just stressed, you have mentally played out the worst case scenario, convinced yourself that everything is going to fall apart, and your heart is beating like you just ran a marathon. You are completely spiraling and you don't know how to pull yourself out. When you feel overwhelming thoughts spiraling, you don't need a vague positive quote or a clinical breathing exercise that ignores your faith. You need to know how to anchor your soul in something completely unshakable. Today, we're opening our Bibles to Psalm 61:2 to look at a raw, beautiful cry of a soul in distress and learn the exact step-by-step biblical process to ground your mind when the storm hits. Let's read Psalm chapter 61, verses 1 and 2 together. Hear my cry, O God. Attend to my prayer. From the end of the earth, I will cry to you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. This psalm was written by David, a man who knew what it felt like to have his entire world collapse around him. When David says, when my heart is overwhelmed, the Hebrew word for overwhelmed is ataf. It literally means to languish, to faint, to be completely shrouded in darkness, or to have your spirit physically wrapped in a heavy shroud. It is the image of a soldier who has run completely out of strength and collapsed on the battlefield, unable to lift his shield or weapon. Notice David's physical location. From the end of the earth, I will cry to you, he says. David felt geographically and spiritually isolated, cut off from the presence of God and the comfort of the temple. Yet, even from that place of utter exhaustion and distance, he cried out. And look at his specific request. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. David didn't ask for a shallow quick fix. He knew that his own intellect, his own strategies, and his own strength were too low. When you're standing in a rising flood of panic, standing on your own 2 feet isn't enough because the water is higher than you are. You need to be lifted up and placed on a rock that is completely out of reach of the waves. A rock that is higher than your circumstances, higher than your anxieties, and completely immovable. I remember when I first started my teaching career, I was completely overwhelmed. I had lesson plans to write, parent-teacher conferences to prepare for, and my grading pile was towering. One Sunday afternoon, I sat at my dining room table, looked at the pile of papers, and literally started to shake. The thoughts started spiraling. I'm going to fail at this. I'm going to get fired. I'm not cut out for this. The shroud of ataf settled over my heart. I tried to force myself to read my Bible, but my eyes couldn't focus. I couldn't even formulate a proper prayer. All I could whisper was, Lord, I am drowning. Lead me to the rock. I had to realize that my spiritual life had become about my performance rather than his position. I didn't need to climb the rock in my own strength. I needed to cry out to him to lead me there. Now remember, once again, the Hebrew word for overwhelmed in Psalm 61:2 is ataf, which means to have your spirit wrapped in a heavy shroud of darkness. When you feel that heavy shroud of anxiety settling over your chest, stop trying to fight the waves in your own strength. Cry out, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Let him lift you out of the flood and place you on his unshakable truth. Many Christian women believe that when they spiral, they just need to try harder to trust God. But that is an exhausting, unsustainable way to live. When David's heart was attacked, he didn't try to pull himself up by his own bootstraps. He admitted his complete weakness and asked to be led. To move from spiraling to practicing peace, we must shift our focus from our own performance to Christ's position. He is the rock. He has already conquered the storm. Your job is not to build the rock. Your job is simply to rest on it. Let's apply the anchor method using David's cry. Pause. Acknowledge the shroud. When overwhelming thoughts begin to spin, stop what you're doing. Don't fight the thoughts or judge yourself. Take a deep, slow breath and say, my heart is feeling overwhelmed right now. The shroud is trying to settle, but I am pausing. Then anchor. Declare the rock. Focus your mind entirely on Psalm 61:2. Whisper, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, Jesus. You are my rock. You are higher than this mountain of papers, this financial stress, this family conflict. Picture yourself being lifted up out of the swirling water and placed on a dry, sunny, solid rock. Now, respond. Take a single step. Now that you're on the rock, ask, what is one small thing I can do from this secure position? If you're overwhelmed by a task, do just 5 minutes of it. If you're overwhelmed by a relationship, commit it to God in prayer and let it go for a day. The point is, you don't have to navigate the flood of overwhelming thoughts alone. If you need a practical, step-by-step library of verses to ground you when the water starts rising, download our free ultimate guide of scriptures for the weight you're carrying at the link below. For immediate interactive biblical guidance when you're in a spiral, try our Burden to Bible Bot. Or join our community in the Anxious but Anchored course to build lasting mental and spiritual resilience. Download the guide, stay on the rock, and I'll see you next week.